in the TARDIS. Next stop everywhere.
Hello, Whovians. Welcome back to Next Stop Everywhere, the Doctor Who podcast. I'm Charles Skaggs, back in the TARDIS once again on a rather rainy and drizzly, yucky Monday evening here in Columbus, Ohio. Sadly, we are once again down a partner in time. We thought that Karen might be joining us, but sadly, that apparently is not the case. But that's okay, because I'm here with my other partner in time and doing it old school, classic Next Stop Everywhere with my partner in time, Jesse Jackson.
Hey, Charles. Yes, always enjoy talking Doctor Who with you. Sad.
I would hope so. We've done it for like 4 years now. So
Yes, we have. And would have loved to have Karen joining us. And who knows, maybe she'll surprise us mid-conversation to go, hi, guys.
Yeah.
But
Hopefully she's just maybe overslept or something, and then hopefully she'll pop in later. So fingers crossed. But that's okay. We can try. We can go along. We've done it before, so obviously this isn't new to us. But we're going to talk about here at episode 127. We're going to talk about It Takes You Away, and this is the 9th episode from Doctor Who series 11 that aired just last night on December 2nd, 2018. So you can pretty much figure out what today's date is. Written by Ed Heim, a new writer to Doctor Who. Directed by Jamie Childs, who directed the previous episodes The Woman Who Fell to Earth and Demons of the Punjab. So I'm looking forward to getting your thoughts on this one, because this is a rather unique episode, I think. It's not your typical Doctor Who episode. And kind of curious there's a lot going on here, a lot of great lines in this episode, a lot of interesting things going on, and some creepy stuff, some strange stuff, and some alien stuff. So we'll talk about that. What's your thoughts on this one?
I liked it.
You don't seem overwhelmed by it, though.
No, what I'm wanting to overpraise this episode, because I went down the rabbit hole seeing what other people are thinking about this new season.
You know what that always does to you.
I know.
That's not healthy.
And it just, there is so much negativity out there that, I know you saw me throwing a ray of sunshine against the darkness today on Twitter.
Right.
Because I'm like, okay, those of us that are happy, we need to be more vocal.
Yes.
Because the negative Nellies are just out there.
It's a lot easier to be negative about something than it is to be positive about something.
And I just Googled. I always Google to get quotes.
Right.
To have things, and there was like, it takes you away, a microcosm of what's good and bad about this season of Doctor Who.
Yeah.
And Charles, we have not given this season straight 10s.
Right.
And I think
we've only given it 1 10 as far as I can remember.
I think so.
Yeah, that was for the for Rosa, for the episode Rosa. Yeah.
And I think I gave the first one a 10.
Yes.
Because I was overly and I stand by it. I was
Okay.
so happy with the episode. But we and if you just said it well, if you want to pick apart a series, any series,
Right.
you can. Be it Firefly, be it X-Files, be it your beloved Twin Peaks.
Yes.
If you go looking for bad things,
Yes.
you can find them.
You can say bad things about any series. You can say bad things about The Wire. You can say bad things about Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
So you can say bad things about Westworld. So it's just no matter how good the series is. Yeah.
And I just get this feeling that there is an agenda,
right.
and there are people just staring, looking for the bad versus going in. I remember Roger Siskel and Ebert both talked about that. Roger and Gene mentioned when they go into the movie theater, they both hoped to see greatness.
Yes.
And then, that was their expectation. And then as the movie went in, they either met that expectation or they brought them down.
Right.
But they went in. And I just feel like so many people are going in with, well, it's going to suck, but maybe they'll rise above it, versus, hey, this is going to be amazing, and go, okay, they swung for the stars, but they missed a little bit. So,
well, in some instances that might be good, because if your expectations are too high, then you're disappointed and you're let down. But you got to find that middle ground, I think.
Yeah.
And
you have had that.
You got to realize that, okay, maybe it's not going to be a perfect episode, but it's not going to be as horrible as you want to think it is, I think.
Yeah.
And that, and I don't want to discount the opinions, the valid opinions, the valid criticisms, because there are valid criticisms of Doctor Who Series 11 and new showrunner Chris Chibnall, and and some of the companions, the way they've been written and whatnot. But the problem is that I think, and this is just my opinion here, I think that the valid criticisms are getting buried under just the relentless nonstop trolling.
Yeah,
so like any valid criticisms are just lost because the people like us are more inclined to just tune out the noise.
Yeah.
And not really listen to those valid criticisms, because they're just buried under the sexism, the racism, the hatred for stuff being quote unquote too PC.
Right.
Which I thought was good that some of the cast members, they said, like, I think it was Jodie Whittaker or somebody who said, like, I don't really get that. It's like, how do you make something too correct? Like, too politically correct. It's like, it's, either it's not correct or it is. So it's just like, how can you make correct too much?
Yeah, and then we'll move on.
Right.
But like, I stumbled across a YouTube channel.
Yeah.
And this person, which by the way has an alias, and and it looks like a very successful YouTube channel. I mean, thousands of subscribers and downloads,
right,
and just talking about why Doctor Who should be a man.
Yeah.
And it just irritated me.
Yeah. Well, no, give you hopefully a little bit of sunshine against that darkness. There's somebody that follows me on Facebook. His name is Steve Pompa, and he's like a local Doctor Who fan here in the Columbus area.
Okay.
And he was voicing his kind of frustration with fandom, Doctor Who fandom at the moment. He says that he was looking like, hey, I'm going to have to start my own Doctor Who podcast so I can talk about, like, I'm getting tired of all the negativity out there. I want to talk about what's positive about Series 11. And I just kind of helpfully pointed out, oh, by the way, and I believe I tagged you on this on Facebook, that, oh, hey, I co-host this podcast called Next Stop Everywhere, the Doctor Who podcast that, guess what, already does that. And
Yes.
you should check it out. And you know, he seemed like he was very positive of that. So hopefully,
Good.
hopefully, Steve, I hope you're listening.
We
hope
hope
you
so
are
too.
checking this out. And we're going to try to be that little bit of positivity in all that negativity.
Yeah.
Because we're reversing the polarity against the negativity of Doctor Who fans.
Yes, and by the way, we got a shout out
Exactly.
of Reverse Polarity, which was very nice.
I was very happy, and unexpectedly from Yaz in that one.
Yes, and there was a really lovely. I read an article. Somebody did the history of the Reverse the Polarity.
Yeah.
And actually, talked about what doctors had used it and how often and where it started.
Well, obviously with the John Pertwee era, it started up, but
yes, it was just really well done.
Yeah.
But that said,
yes,
I like the episode, Charles, and I can't wait to talk to you about it.
All right, so let's talk about it. So,
okay,
all right, so we're going to talk about It Takes You Away, obviously, and now we had some notable guest cast in this episode that I want to talk about before we get going. Primarily Kevin Eldon, who played Ribbons of the Seven Stomachs, who we're going to talk about here in a minute, because I have 4 topics I want to talk about real quick. I got the Doctor and Yaz I want to talk about. Then I want to talk about Ryan and Graham, who have a very important moment, especially at the end of the episode. And then I want to talk about Hanne and Eric, her father, because we need to talk about Eric and his rather horrible parenting. And then lastly, I want to talk about Ribbons, since I was mentioning Ribbons of the Seven Stomachs, and the Solicitract.
Yes.
Solitract. And our aliens for the episode. So that's how I want to break out this episode. But Kevin Eldon, who played Ribbons, he was actually in a previous Doctor Who story, not an episode on television, but he played in the wilderness years between the 1996 TV movie and the return in 2005. He voiced in kind of like a webcast Doctor Who story companion called Antimony. And that was in the Doctor Who webcast story Death Comes to Time, which was a 7th Doctor story featuring Sylvester McCoy and I believe Sophie Aldred. I'm not sure. But it's been a while since I've listened to that one, so I'm a little rusty on that one, admittedly. But he was in that story, so he does have a previous Doctor Who connection. And he was also in the movie Hot Fuzz, which was the Simon Pegg, Nick Frost movie, as a character named Sergeant Tony Fisher. And he's known to animation fans as playing Penfold in the 2015 revival of Danger Mouse, which is a British animated series that's kind of like a animal version of James Bond, and it's very like spy stuff.
Yes.
And I really dig that show. I seriously dig the original series that aired on Nickelodeon back in the 80s. And but he's playing Penfold, which is Danger Mouse's psychic, in the 2015 revival. And he was also on Game of Thrones in a couple episodes. So this guy's been all over the place. He played on Game of Thrones. He played an actor portraying Ned Stark. Remember that there was
yes,
like a play based on the story of Ned Stark and the death of Joffrey and all that. So he played that actor playing Ned Stark. And he also played another character named Goldcloak, a minor character, in another episode. So he's been all over the place. And you probably didn't recognize him because he's obviously buried in a lot of makeup.
Yes.
We also got the return of Sharon D. Clarke as Grace O'Brien, or as we find out in this episode, not Grace O'Brien, much to poor Graham's chagrin.
Yes.
Who he was horribly disappointed. But we all saw it coming. Unfortunately for Graham, he didn't. And but he thankfully realized what was going on in time.
that, by the way, when we
Yes.
get to that, I want to talk about what a wonderful reveal on how he changed his mind.
Right.
I mean, just so powerful.
And it made sense given his character, so that actually worked for me. Eleanor Wallwork, who obviously we're going to talk about later, she played Hanne, the blind girl. And interestingly, she's blind in real life.
Nice.
And she is the very first blind actor to portray a blind or visually impaired, take your pick, character on Doctor Who.
Nice.
So another glass ceiling broken on Doctor Who.
Nice.
So that's kind of cool. Christian Rubik played Eric and her father, and Lisa Stoke played Trina, his wife, until it's ultimately revealed that, hey, it's not your wife.
Right.
And you need to get the heck out of Dodge, son. So that's our guest cast for this week. And pretty interesting one, I thought. All right.
I thought so too.
Okay.
All right.
Let's talk. Ready to talk some main discussion here.
I am ready.
All right. I'm trying to move things along. First topic, and this theme this week is going to be a little obscure. Okay. So don't feel bad if you don't get this one.
Okay.
But it does relate to the episode, and I'll point out why at the end.
Okay.
All right. First topic, science fiction.
Okay.
Okay. And that I want to talk about is the Doctor and Yaz.
Okay.
So we have the Doctor, obviously, very curious about finding this locked house in the middle of Norway. The TARDIS lands in 2018 Norway, which the Doctor recognizes because of those little fjordy bits at the top.
And because she ate the soil.
So, again, we have a Doctor who's just like licking and identifying things by tasting them, or
right.
So very David Tennant and Matt Smith once again.
Yeah.
And so obviously, Jodie was very influenced, I think, by David Tennant, probably because obviously she appeared with David Tennant in Broadchurch. So she probably made a very good point of watching his era, and I think she's also been very influenced by Matt Smith, which is not a bad thing, mind you.
No, not at all.
And so they've arrived in 2018 Norway. They've come across this house. It's all locked up, and
with no smoke.
No smoke. They're kind of wondering what's going on, so they break and enter thanks to the sonic screwdriver, and they find this girl inside, a blind girl left alone, apparently for 4 days. So the Doctor's like, okay, something's up here. And hey, gee, there's presumably a monster lurking around that has her really freaked out.
Yeah.
So what's your thoughts on the Doctor in this episode? And Yaz, while we're at it, because Yaz kind of spends a good chunk of the episode with the Doctor.
I just love Jodie's Doctor, and I thought this one was another good example of her, figuring out things,
right,
and doing the exploration, excited about the danger,
right,
and excited about the mystery.
She's very much the adventurer.
She is the adventurer, and a very good negotiator.
Right.
When she was talking about with, Ribbon of the multiple stomachs.
That was, yes, exactly. Yeah. Where she's basically, and my wife Lori probably appreciated that because she's a contract negotiator in real life.
Yes.
And so they were kind of haggling for trying to get items to cross this kind of void between these dimensions, as it turns out.
And I kind of jumping to the end.
Yes.
Where she says she makes a friend and she's happy about that.
Yes.
And she and says, friends don't lie to each other or something
Right.
along the lines. And, she truly, um,
Now I know we're going to talk about the solo tract
yeah,
later,
exactly. But
but
all I'm
but
saying,
but as far as the doctor's perspective,
yeah,
were you happy that she reached out to the solo tract?
yeah, because the reason the Doctor originally stole the TARDIS
Hmm.
has been established is she wants to see things and she wants to go places and she wants to learn and to explore and experience
Right.
and the idea of a whole nother universe, um and just the excitement of that, she's okay with it.
Yeah.
She's okay as long as her friends are safe.
Yeah.
She's great with it, and I just love that energy and almost childlike wonder
Hmm.
of, oh, look what we found, look what's here,
Right.
this is so cool. And so I just love her. I love that Yaz got a chance to be one-on-one with the Doctor
Yeah.
in the dark caverns. And, once again, was it creepy?
Yep.
Yes. Was there aliens? Yes.
Yep.
So it was
A
it
Doctor
was
Who story.
nice. It was a great Doctor Who story, and it
And it was unusual. It's not something
yeah,
you would find on American television.
no, and I loved the whole, the caves and how scary it was, and the whole flesh moths, and
Right.
it
If
was
it-
a great adventure.
yeah, there were a lot of new ideas in this
Yes.
story. And
And
and I really like that because and that's one thing that we're definitely getting this series with Chibnall. He's trying really hard to throw out new concepts. He's trying to make things stuff we haven't seen dozens of episodes with like and I know this is frustrating a lot of older fans and whatnot that we're not seeing the Daleks, we're not seeing the Cybermen, etc. But we're seeing new stuff. And that
right.
can't be a bad thing that we're seeing new stuff.
Yeah, and I think part of the frustration as we get back on our soapbox
Right.
is your palate. You want comfort food.
Right.
Doctor Who is a comfort. So whether it's mac and cheese or peanut butter and jelly or
Right.
meatloaf or fried chicken, name whatever comfort
Yeah.
food you have. Well, Chris Chibnall and Jodie Whittaker are doing um, different. They
Yes.
are bringing us different food, and not all of it, not high French cuisine. It
Right.
could be a take on, like I'm sure in Columbus you have the same thing where people take standard like bar food
Yeah.
and they kind of change it up a little bit.
Right.
Or big thing in Texas here is Southern cooking, but kind of in a new fancy way, or they kind of do things differently.
Right.
So that's what they're doing. And I do think some of the people are like, but I want my mashed potatoes and gravy. And
Yeah.
it's like, oh, it's okay. Just
Roll with it.
trust me. He will go back to the Daleks
Yeah.
sometimes.
Yeah.
He will do a Cyberman story. He will do a Weeping Angel story. Who knows?
Right.
But trust him now. He said, okay. And the BBC said, we want this as a jumping off start. We want a fresh take on the Doctor. And he's done that. He's done that in all 9 episodes.
Right.
So, yeah, I love the Doctor and I love Yaz. And, it was nice to have Yaz to do a little something too, because I know at times the TARDIS can be very crowded.
Right. Now there was one thing, since you're on the subject of Yaz, there was a great little exchange between her and the Doctor, where the Doctor tells her that, "Oh, I have 7 grandmothers, or I had 7 grandmothers,"
Yes.
and she talks about that, and Yaz is, of course, is just startled. She's like, "Wait, you had?" First, she's like, "Wait, you actually had a grandmother?" And then, yeah, oh yeah, I had 7, and and the Doctor talks about a couple of them, saying that, well, she refers to as Granny 5, who
Yes.
actually told her about the Solar Tract.
Yes.
To
Only
supposedly
when she couldn't sleep.
Only when she had trouble sleeping. And she tells this big story that I actually have the full quote for later on. But she goes down this whole big story, and then Yaz is just like, wait a minute. She told you that as a bedtime story?
Yes. Yeah, and I also like, she also said that Granny.
Granny 5.
Which one was the?
The Zygon. Yeah, she did.
Yeah, the Zygon.
Well, she also said that Granny 5 said that another Granny, Granny 2, was a Zygon's secret agent.
Yeah, and so the.
No, the question is the Doctor just making crap up? Do you think, or is this actually legit? Who knows, right?
Who knows? And I think that's the point. I have a good friend, Sarah Hickman.
Yes.
No longer performs anymore, but she used to say, "Never let a good story never let the truth get in the way of a good story."
Right.
So when she would be telling stories before she sang, she would embellish and she would change details because it made for a better story to make for a better song. And I think
creative license.
Exactly. Yeah. I like to think that the Doctor's grandma had gone through 7
regenerations. Yes.
Generations.
Yes.
And so that's
what I would like to think. It's like, well, okay, are you describing incarnations? But if she's not, if she is talking about incarnations, then during her second incarnation, she was a secret agent for the Zygons.
Yeah.
And then apparently stopped being that. And then her 5th incarnation was just like, wait a minute, I used to be that. I don't like Granny 2 because she was a secret agent for the Zygons.
Well, I'm assuming that Granny 2 was trapped.
Right.
And Zygon took care of, was holding her.
Maybe replaced by a Zygon.
Yeah, and then regenerated. But yes, I loved that.
I want to know more about the Doctor's grandmother now.
Yeah, exactly.
All of them.
Yeah, exactly.
So this is just yet another layer of mystery to the Doctor that Chibnall has just added to the mythos, apparently.
Perfect.
During his era. I really like that. And now the Doctor also gets on Eric, Hanne's father, and basically tries to shock him back to his senses. But and we'll talk about this a little bit, that I kind of thought that the Doctor would go off a little bit more on him, considering, he intentionally tried to make his daughter afraid and left her alone. So you would think there would have been more ramifications about that. But we'll talk about that a little bit later.
Okay. Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah. All right. Anything else about the Doctor in this episode before we move on?
Nope.
All right.
Nope.
Topic number 2. Perhaps vampires is a bit strong, but ... And this does have a connection, I promise you.
Okay.
But because of the vampires line that Ryan and Graham do when they try to look in the mirror and they don't see their reflections, I thought that was a very fitting segment title. And
wasn't that just so matter of fact? We know if we were vampires, right?
Yes. Ryan's kind of panicking a little bit. He's like, am I a vampire now? What happened? What just happened?
And
I thought it was. I really like Ryan and Graham together.
Yes, I do too.
And it looks like we're finally seeing some breaking of the ice at last.
Yes, because of that wonderful at the end.
Yes.
Well, at least we have each other.
Mm-hmm.
And
Ryan referred to Graham as granddad for the very first time.
Yeah, and then he's like, "What? What? You're hard of hearing?" And then moved on. I mean, I love that he did not let him, did not make it overly sentimental. Did not make it overly move on, old man.
Right. They're starting kind of settling into this kind of Spock and McCoy. They pick on each other, but there's actually an underlying affection for one another.
Yes. And
am I wrong in that?
No, I think you're spot on. Obviously, Graham, he's sharing with, his wife, but
Yes.
it's not. He's sharing what all he's done.
The
I've been in
quote
played it.
unquote grace.
Yeah,
Yes.
he's sharing grace. I've been on planets. I've walked. Sounds like you're getting along well without me. And he just opens up. It's horrible.
Right.
I am
Lost without you.
crushed. I am lost without you.
Yeah. I thought was really good stuff that Bradley um, I forget his name. I'm sorry. Bradley Walsh did as Graham there with it. Just that you could just feel that his pain of losing Grace and how much he loved her.
Yeah, and so happy to see her. And then what a wonderful job of acting is when she urges him to stay.
Right.
And he goes, "You're not real." Because there's no way Grace would let Ryan stay in danger.
Right. Like, yeah, because that was the tell that Graham picked up on, was that quote unquote Grace thought that Ryan was a big boy and could handle himself outside. And Graham knew instantly, like, no, the Grace I know would be right out there in a heartbeat trying to protect Ryan.
Yeah. And exactly, it's the same thing. And I know we're going to get to that, but Eric, no, anyone who is his wife and a mother would not have him stay to be, I just love them. I may give away my rating by sharing this. But
don't do it.
No.
It's tempting.
Well, of course, I pack a sandwich. Sometimes
I see where we're going.
Sometimes we get busy and we don't get a chance. Well,
you know what that was? That was a callback to the episode Rosa,
right?
Because remember, they were sitting around and Graham's just like, "Can we get something to eat?"
Right.
Because you notice we just like we're sitting around and like all this time goes by and we don't eat. So so apparently Graham has gotten himself in the habit of like, well, hey, I don't know when we're going to eat again, so I'm packing a sandwich just in case.
Yeah. Now my only issue was he didn't have it like in wax paper.
Yeah.
Or something.
And we don't know how old that sandwich was.
Exactly. So I would have liked it a little bit better if it had been in a wax.
Especially with a pickle. Apparently Graham's going to smell like dill pickle.
Yeah. So I just would have liked, I would have think it would have been just a little funnier.
Right.
Or it just as funny, but enjoyed. Yes. I love that.
He should have pulled out like something really comical, like a big hoagie. Like,
hey, you never know.
Or a big submarine sandwich just out of nowhere. That would have been fun.
Yeah. So so we get they're together. We didn't get a fist bump though, did we?
No, we haven't gotten the fist bump. I'm guessing we're gonna hopefully see that in the season finale.
But it was
good.
Really
and I really like that scene. I know we talked about it, but the with Ryan and Graham, where Ryan notices how pained his grandfather is. Just he could see just how much Graham cared for Grace, and still does.
Yeah.
And so he kind of finally decided to throw Graham a bone, and called him Granddad, and that triggered the whole you're hard of hearing and all that we talked about. But I thought there was a finally some sensitivity from Ryan on that, so I'm glad we're finally getting that development from him.
I also liked that Hanne.
Yes.
Hanne.
Yeah.
Calls out Ryan.
Yeah.
And because Ryan wasn't very nice to her.
No, he wasn't at the beginning, and and Yaz is getting on his case about it, and rightly so. But
I agree.
But Ryan was just like, look, I don't like kids. I don't really get along with them. They don't get along with me.
Yeah.
So of course he's going to be paired with Hanne,
exactly. Yep.
And that was good because obviously it broke him out of his shell a little bit.
Yes.
And she hugged him and
Yes.
everything. So it all worked out.
Yeah, I
And
like
that was
that
good
a
for
lot.
Ryan.
Yeah, it was, and it he's a really bad liar.
Right.
Conservatory, like
Yes,
from a
like a
game of
clue.
Clue.
Yes,
Yes, it was great.
that's what I was thinking.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
So
and
perfect.
yeah, the great companions seem to go through like their own little character arcs over the
Yes,
course of
absolutely
the show
right.
during their time in the TARDIS, and like Amy Pond or Rory, who obviously ended up way differently than when they started.
Yes,
So we're finally, and that's called character development. What a concept! And Chibnall is doing that during his era with
and
these
so just
with his
maybe,
writers,
just maybe look for something good
right?
instead of just complaining all the time that it isn't exactly the who you want.
Yeah,
Never.
there's a lot of the criticism. I know we keep talking about it. I'm as frustrated with us talking about criticism as you are, guys.
Yeah, yeah, we are.
And that the criticism of that the companions are boring and they don't offer much. And I'm thinking, well, are you really paying attention to what's going on? Because I don't think you are.
Yeah, I totally agree. And
Because Graham
because
especially has been fantastic companion.
yeah, he's been a great companion. There's been character arcs. Yes, it is a very crowded
TARDIS.
TARDIS,
Yes.
but I think they're doing their best to try to get them
Right.
on the each of them equal time. And I don't know, maybe you wanted the balance. You could, if you just went Graham and Ryan
Right.
with the Doctor, I don't know if that would be off balance. I don't know, but
I think a lot of people were expecting that, well, Ryan and Yaz would be the good balance for the Doctor.
Right.
If you were just going to have two companions.
Right.
But the thing is, though, Graham has just proven himself to kind of be the star companion at the moment.
Yeah, and they just love.
So then do you do Graham and Ryan, or do you do Graham and Yaz, or what?
I think they want, and they want this Graham, the whole, he's the reason why,
Right.
because he's missing Grace so much.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so absolutely. All right.
So yeah,
Next one.
There's a lot of arguments you could be made in any direction on that
Yes.
one, I think. All right, third topic, Hanne and Eric. So we got to talk about Eric and his horrible parenting skills first, right off the bat. What the hell is this guy thinking, Jesse?
I truly do not understand this.
Right.
Um.
So just to kind of lay this out,
Okay.
I want to set the table for you, and then you could just take it and take the ball and run with it to mix my metaphors. Okay, so we find out over the course of this episode that Eric has apparently, he's kind of set his daughter up in this very isolated cabin in the middle of nowhere in Norway, far away from their original city of Oslo. And it's in this very remote wooded area. And to kind of keep her in the house, he's kind of set up stuff around, like with using speakers and all this other equipment to kind of make it seem like there's this monster that's roaring, that every, like, once a day as the sun sets will come out and roar, and it frightens her to the point where she's hiding under a table and just going, it takes you away, all petrified. Because, hey, she's blind, she can't really see what's going on. And, she doesn't have anybody else to talk to, so she's kind of left with her own imagination. And while this is going on, as we find out, well, hey, Eric's off in a mirror dimension, hanging out with a woman he presumes is his dead wife, somehow brought back in this mirror dimension, and he's just leaving his kid to suffer and doesn't seem really bothered that she's off by herself. So, am I reading this situation wrong?
No, and Charles, how could you, if you're a parent,
Yes.
how could you leave your child alone?
Right. If you actually care about them.
Yeah, I mean,
There's plenty of neglected kids out there.
yes.
So I get that, but
Yeah.
when you're doing this intentionally to code, just because you're trying to make yourself happy and you're not
Yeah.
thinking about your kid.
Well, and as he said, well, she's a teenager. I left her plenty of food.
It's like, what? Like she's a dog or something,
Yeah.
Like, oh,
Well,
I left out a water dish and some kibble. So,
well, yeah. You and Lori, right? You don't
right.
arrange for when you guys went to England.
Yeah, we
You
actually
didn't have anyone sit down and check on your beloved kitty, did you?
Yeah, we
Keiko?
did. Well, yeah, we did.
No. You just threw plenty of water out.
Oh,
And
I
plenty
see
of
what you're saying.
food,
Yes, yeah, I see what you're doing here. Yes.
right?
Yeah. We just like, oh yeah, Keiko, you'll be fine by yourself for like a week and a half. No big deal.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, we didn't. Of course, we had my parents come over, and we would we
Yes.
never do that. We would never make sure or leave our cat alone unattended. To be neglected
No.
like that for any length of time, especially like not 4 days, as we're told in
And
this story that the last time her father went out was 4 days ago.
I,
It's like, are
there
you kidding me
was
with that?
when we had
This guy's the worst
our
parent ever.
when we had our Beagle Ranger.
Yeah,
Um,
I remember Ranger. I remember you talking
yeah,
about Ranger. So
we once let him out in the backyard. Um, you know, at the end of the night,
yeah,
and we ended up one of us shut the door, and we did not realize he was out there. And like at 2 a.m, like, hey, why isn't Ranger? Because he usually
right.
would crawl in bed with us, and we're like, oh my goodness, and
You felt
he's
guilt. You felt you felt
he's
horrible.
sleeping on the porch, he's fine,
Yeah,
you know.
but you
But
felt horrible for leaving him out there.
horrible.
Yes.
So, I mean, I don't care
At,
how much.
at least you didn't run off to a mirror dimension and
Yes.
for 4 days and leave him on the porch by himself for 4 days.
Go have a second honeymoon with your recently dead wife.
Right.
To the thought that if you were,
Yeah.
if I'm telling you right now,
Yeah.
right, the mom should have said, "Go.
Yeah.
You can't leave our daughter alone." And
But
why?
he was totally. It's kind of like with Graham, or
Yeah.
remember, and quote unquote, Grace.
Yeah.
Grace wasn't caring about the kid, or
Right.
Ryan, or Grace wasn't caring about Ryan in this
And
episode.
he just didn't care. Eric didn't care. And then,
But he's just all hung up like, oh hey, I got my dead wife back, and
yeah,
maybe he's just because of his grief of losing her.
maybe so.
But
But
still, it's just
you know,
it's so frustrating. And the other frustrating thing I found out about this whole storyline, this subplot,
yeah,
the Doctor, or even Yaz or Graham especially, you think they
yeah,
would have like decked this guy? Like, you just
yes,
neglected your kid for 4 days, dude, while you self-indulged in a mirror dimension.
mm,
I was waiting for this big like tirade. And then the fact that they just like, well, okay, I guess we'll leave Hannah with him because hey, he's her father and her mother's dead.
yeah. And now to be fair, he
Yeah,
does at the end. We're going back to Oslo,
right.
where there's net, and I'm sorry.
But you think they at
Um,
least make sure that she's
you
okay?
would think so. You would
Like
think,
try to travel maybe to like a couple months down the road to make sure she's okay.
or at least you could see Graham, and so Graham could not have done it, but Yaz,
Yes, being a
uh,
police officer, you
yeah,
think she would
would
have.
come and go, pull him aside, and go,
Yeah,
understand, I'm
right,
a police officer,
right.
and I will be having you check. I will be having someone check on you.
Yeah, at least threaten him with it.
Yeah. Um, you remember the movie The Village?
Yes, I've seen parts of it. I haven't watched the whole thing, but I've seen parts of it on cable.
Yeah. Um,
With the M. Night Shyamalan movie.
yes,
Yes.
where they spoilers, they
Yes.
fake monsters to keep the people in the village.
And not realizing that, hey, it's the modern day. Like
Yes.
they think it's like, this
Yeah.
technologically uh, um, regressive society.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it's actually the modern day, and there's like, oh, hey,
Yeah.
there's a highway right outside, and
Yeah.
yeah.
It is not. It is not based on this book, but there is a book that has a very similar premise that's absolutely wonderful.
Yeah.
It is a Running Out of Time by Margaret Haddix. I had picked up the book. The book is much better than the movie, though I like the movie.
Right.
There was a little bit of similarity in there, but not too much. The difference in the book is everyone knows it's modern time.
Yeah.
They just most people knew it's kind of a village. So anyway,
Okay.
I hated him. I truly thought he was horrible.
Right.
How could you do this to your wonderful daughter? And she was a really strong character, and so I agree with you. I think if I have any complaints about this, it's that someone should have called him to the carpet.
Yeah. Yeah. Now I get that maybe they didn't want to do it in front of Hanne.
Yes.
Because, hey, you don't want, like, her father's all she has at this point. You don't want to, like, freak her out any more than she's already been freaked out this episode.
Yes.
She's probably going to need all kinds of therapy as it is. But
Absolutely.
But you would think you would have pulled him aside and kind of like thrown him up against a wall and go, "Hey, listen here, Sparky.
Yes, absolutely.
You're gonna do right by this kid, or else. At least that's what I would have done. But
absolutely,
let the doctor do some Venusian and keto on him or something."
Yes.
All right.
Okay.
Anything else about this topic before we move on?
Nope.
All right. Fourth and final segment. Oh, I forgot to give the title of the third segment. The third segment is called "Snap Out of It."
Okay.
So we had science fiction, perhaps vampires is a bit strong, but, and then third, snap out of it, and then lastly, D is for dangerous. And the reason I chose these four segment titles is because all four are the name of songs by the band Arctic Monkeys.
Oh, okay.
Which is referenced in this episode because apparently Yaz notices Hanne's shirt, which is an Arctic Monkeys concert shirt or something, and we found out that Yaz's cousin went to go see the Arctic Monkeys during their first show, and apparently Hanne's mother was a big fan of the band and left her shirt after she died.
Okay.
So
nice.
So I just thought it was a really subtle mention, but I thought that was a great excuse to go like pull some Arctic Monkeys song titles because I actually like the band. It's an indie rock band, and that gets played on a lot of alternative stations, including CD 102.5 here in Columbus.
Okay,
and,
nice.
So highly recommend them. Check them out if you're so inclined.
Very cool.
So that's where that title is. So this is Ribbons and the Solar Tract I want to talk about. So Ribbons of the Seven Stomachs and the Solar Tract are sort of big bad, but not really that bad at all, as it turns out. What's your thoughts on these characters?
I was so disappointed.
Yeah.
That instead of Chekhov's gun, I was hoping for Chekhov's sandwich. That when Ribbon kept talking about being hungry,
right?
That
you expected Graham to trade a sandwich.
Yes, I was. I just kept waiting for that,
Never
and
happened.
To go. This is a absolutely
yes.
This is a very tasty burger.
Needs mustard.
Yeah. No, I mean he looked creepy.
Right.
He kept calling them all delicious.
Yeah, so he kind of got this like very Predator vibe from him.
Yes.
And anyway, we turned out he was very willing to betray the Doctor and the others because he cuts the Doctor's, like the Doctor uses this like yarn thread or whatever
Right.
to try to kind of Hansel and Gretel her way through the void, and that path, like using that as a path from the portal and to get back to it. And of course, Ribbons cuts that. Pretty willing to sacrifice any of them, perhaps eat them. We don't know. And but ultimately, he ends up paying the price because the flesh moths end up attacking him, and the Doctor's just like, well, okay, guess like he's dead. So all right, let's use him as a distraction while we escape to freedom.
Yeah.
So, what'd you think of that sequence?
I thought that was good. The Doctor at times can be very cutthroat.
Right.
And so I thought that was very in character.
Maybe she thought that was the only way to save Ryan and the others.
Exactly.
So, yeah. Graham and them. So, yeah. So
the Solitract was an interesting concept.
Yeah, this sentient universe.
Yeah, that when it's here, nothing fits together.
Right.
So they had to get rid of it so everything could fit in place.
Right.
Which left it very alone. A little bit convenient that
right.
that the Doctor's grandmother had discussed this.
Yes.
So she could remember, but hand wave.
Right.
Shout out to Karen.
We miss you, Karen.
So, yes, we did. So I was okay with it.
Yeah.
And I know you
what did you think of the Doctor, like seemingly wanting to be friends with the Solitract? The Solitract was apparently just a very lonely creature.
And I believe the Doctor was negotiating in good faith.
Yeah.
And I believe when the Solitract and the Doctor come to agreement, I believe the Doctor was willing to stay there.
Yeah.
And then when it turns out it's still unstable,
right.
They have to leave. I love the scene of when the Solitract characters were done with whoever they were talking to. They pushed the hand out.
Yeah, it was like some people were calling like a force push, like in Star Wars, where you telekinetically throw them, and push them away.
I was really, you had an interesting discussion, and I'm hoping you can carry on this a little bit.
Okay.
On Twitter today.
Yeah.
And I did not write down who said it.
Ken from Chicago, or is
okay,
it?
Yes,
is that what
it
you're thinking?
Was it Ken? Where they said yes, hey Ken, where another non-villain villain,
yes,
or something along that
that was Ken from Chicago.
So
and I kind of countered back with that.
So share that a little bit as I pour my Diet Coke.
Yeah. So all right. While you're tending bar, the pop. There you go. Look at you. He wasn't kidding, folks. He's really doing that. So Ken from Chicago. We're talking about how we were going to talk about this episode on Next Stop today, and Ken kind of like gets a little, I don't want to say snotty, but he's just kind of a little bit critical, a little cynical, I guess is the word I'm looking for. He's a little cynical, and he's like, well, okay, I guess this is like another non-evil villain for Series 11. And so I kind of countered back, and I was like, well, actually, the Jon Pertwee era of Doctor Who back in the classic era seemed to have a lot of quote-unquote non-evil characters, and as the threats, like such as the Silurians, for one, as I posted in the GIF that I attached along with my response.
Yeah.
And so it's not unheard of, and I think it's just something that Chibnall kind of liked. He kind of liked those morally gray, Maybe they're not as evil as we would like to think we are, especially
And
not compared to the Daleks. Because
yeah,
for one thing, it shows how truly evil the Daleks and the Master
yeah.
is in comparison.
So the only thing I thought Ken was saying, and I think it's a fair criticism. We were talking
Yes.
earlier about
Yeah, the fair critics.
Yeah, there
Yeah.
could be is okay.
Critiques. Yeah.
You've gone to this well, maybe a little too much in this one season.
Yes.
That many of your villains aren't truly evil.
Right.
So that's how I look at, not as a criticism, just as not as a complaint, but more of a, did they go to the well too often on this? Because you had the spiders and this, and I
think that is a fair criticism.
Yeah, I do too.
Because we started off the season because we had the hunter, and in the first episode, and he was obviously he was very morally bankrupt, and then we had the time traveler in Rosa, who obviously was up to no good.
Right.
So we had some evil characters.
Yeah.
But the question is about,
Well, the spider one was, they weren't evil.
Yeah, arachnids in the UK, they weren't evil. And then some others, they haven't been truly evil, I think.
I would have to go through and determine, because,
I think it's pretty...
The human in the Kerblam
was
evil. Kerblam. He was a terrorist.
Exactly.
So I mean,
he was just a nice guy that turned out to be evil.
Yes, absolutely.
So there were villains here in this season.
Absolutely.
It's just that it seemed to be more than usual. There were characters that weren't truly evil in that sense. And like I pointed out, evil, it's a big universe, especially on Doctor Who, because we have time and space involved as well. Right. And evil is essentially a very subjective concept.
Yes.
Like, a lot of people think, for example, Donald Trump is evil.
Yeah.
A lot of people think Barack Obama is evil. They're not necessarily the same people, mind you.
Exactly.
And so one person's evil is another person's hero, depending on your point of view.
Yeah.
So,
by the way, it would be interesting to find a subset of people who find Donald Trump
and Barack
Obama even. That would be a very interesting subset.
That has to be a very messed up person.
Yes, indeed.
Or a very confused person.
Yes.
Because of that kind of diametric opposition.
I thought...
but as far as the solo track goes, so the solo track...
At the risk of...
Yeah.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, that's all right.
At the risk of betraying one of my quotes...
Yeah.
How can you not love a talking frog at the end?
Yeah. Now, a lot of people were apparently really digging that episode up until the talking frog point, because that was what I was going to talk about next. And so, I thought it could have been executed better. I didn't really have a problem with it because it's not like it was a frog. It was just the Solitract had assumed the form of a frog because based off of what Graham knew about Grace liking frogs.
Yes.
That thought that form would be the way to talk to the Doctor. And I know some people were disappointed. It's the theme here that it wasn't somebody else from the Doctor's past, especially someone we knew. And why didn't it take the form of Rose or Captain Jack or River Song or somebody like that? And it's well, maybe they're not trying to go back to that well too often early, right in Jodie Whittaker's first season. Whatever the case, it's just it's okay. It was just a manifestation. It wasn't like it was an actual frog and the alien's a talking frog. No, the alien just assumed the shape of one.
Yeah.
For the purpose of just trying to be quirky and weird storytelling.
Yes.
Very much in the Douglas. This is something Douglas Adams probably would have written.
Yes.
So if you're a fan of Douglas Adams and you love Doctor Who, Douglas Adams, I think, would have definitely appreciated the talking frog bit.
Oh, I absolutely agree.
So that's my take on that anyway, because I know that's a little controversial about this episode. All right. Anything else about this episode before we move on?
I think it was a good episode.
Yeah.
I wouldn't call it a classic.
Right.
But it's a perfectly good episode. I think, it's a solid episode.
Solid Doctor Who
liked
story.
It.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. One thing I want to address really quickly before we move on, because I know we're running long a little bit. When I was talking about the Arctic monkeys, I forgot to mention that the Arctic monkeys are actually from High Green in England.
Oh, okay.
And High Green, the reason I'm bringing this up, High Green is a suburb, or basically a suburb of Sheffield.
Okay.
So Sheffield.
There we go. There is a connection.
So Sheffield
it's like the Marvel universe. It all fits together.
It's all connected. So obviously Sheffield's getting a lot of love in the Chris Chibnall era,
Good.
and I think the Arctic monkeys reference was very intentional.
Yes.
As part of that. Just a little trivia bit there, everybody. All right. Okay. So what's your favorite lines of the episode? Because there were a lot of good ones in this episode.
There were.
Very great very good
as
dialogue.
We were just talking, the Doctor, the Solitrek is a frog who talks like Grace. Solitrek frog. My own form is endless, but this frog is a form that delights me as it once delighted Grace. And the Doctor said, there's me thinking the day had no more surprises left.
That was good. Yeah, that was good.
Yeah, I liked it a lot. Yes.
That was good. The Doctor talking about Graham getting lured in, which I thought was really good. So the Doctor says, both of you, referring to both Ryan and Yaz, both of you stay clear of the mirror. It's already tried to lure in Graham. And Graham's like, hey, I wasn't lured. It's not like I gave it my credit card details.
Yeah. The Doctor did say, this woman is clearly an alien force, collapsing two realities and impersonating your dead wife. Time to move on, mate.
Yeah, she was saying that to Eric, and I thought that was really good. It's like, time to move on, mate.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Dude, do I have to hit you upside the head to get you to snap out of it? And that's why I chose to snap out of it for Eric, by the way. So I have this big, long, not really big, long, but it's kind of a little bit of a lengthy speech, so give me a little latitude here.
Okay, please.
This is the Doctor and Yaz talking about the Doctor's grandmothers, plural, apparently. The Doctor says, Soul Attract. It's a theory, a myth, a bedtime story my gran used to tell me. Yaz is like, you had a grandmother? The Doctor replies, I had 7, but Granny 5, my favorite, used to tell me about the Soul Attract, because in the beginning, pre-time, pre-everything, all the laws and elements and nuts and bolts of the universe were there. Light, matter, mass, and so on. But they couldn't fit together properly because the Soul Attract was there. So what is the Soul Attract? A consciousness, an energy. Our reality cannot work with the Soul Attract energy present. The most basic ideas of the universe just get ruined. Think of it like a kid with chickenpox, nuclear chickenpox, who wants to join in but always ends up infecting everyone else. Our universe cannot work with the Soul Attract in it. Yaz is like, your gran told you this as a bedtime story? The Doctor replies, only when I had trouble sleeping. So, what did our universe do? It managed to exile the Soul Attract into separate, unreachable existence, the Soul Attract plane. And suddenly, everything makes sense. The universe could finally work because the Soul Attract had been removed. Yaz responds, hang on, are you saying we're now on the Soul Attract plane? The Doctor replies, I wish I wasn't, but I think I am. I'm scared. Are you scared? I'm genuinely terrified. This is a separate exiled universe that is also a consciousness. That's what Granny 5 said, a conscious universe. She also said that Granny 2 was a secret agent for the Zygons, but she seems bang on with this one.
Yes. Oh, perfect.
Thank you.
And then at the end, the Doctor, you are the maddest, most beautiful thing I've ever experienced, and I haven't even scratched the surface. I wish I could stay, but if either of us are going to survive, you're going to have to let me go and keep on being brilliant, by herself.
That was a great little speech there.
Yes,
I
it
like
was.
that. I like that a lot.
Yeah.
The only other line I had, of course, was Ryan and Graham at the beginning when they're trying to look at their reflections in the mirror. Ryan says, "Whoa, why are we not in the mirror?" And Graham's like, "I don't know." Ryan replies, "We'd know if we were vampires, right?"
Yeah, I love that.
That was great.
Yeah,
I mean,
really,
these two
really
together
well done.
when they're being goofy, I love them.
Yeah,
together.
I agree.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
All right, so what's your rating for this one?
I give it, as I talked about, I'm giving it 8 out of 10 cheese and pickle sarnie sandwiches.
Nice, very nice. Yeah, and I can imagine, especially considering how old that sandwich is, that might smell a bit.
Ooh, yes,
Yeah.
but not like the other person's wee.
At least it wasn't a Limburger sandwich.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
All right, I give it 8.5. Reflected Slayer t-shirts, because that was one thing we didn't talk about that I thought was pretty cool, is that that was the way to kind of tell that they were in a mirror dimension, because I noticed right off the bat that Eric's Slayer t-shirt, the band Slayer,
yeah,
it was reversed. Like the logo was reversed. And obviously when the Doctor and Yaz and Graham went in, their images on screen were flipped.
yes.
Which was a neat little camera trick. They just reversed the images. And so the Doctor's part on her hair was going the opposite way. And so was Graham's and everything. So it was very subtle. If you're not really paying close attention, like if you're looking at your phone, you're probably not going to notice it.
Yeah.
So don't look at your phone when you're watching Doctor Who, guys. Little important tip here from me on that.
Absolutely.
And because I just thought that was really cool, and it tipped me right off that this is some kind of mirror dimension. So
nice.
All right, as opposed to just going through the mirror too, as the portal. But I dug that. I dug that a lot. All right.
Absolutely.
I do have a very quick reverse the polarity segment.
Okay.
So in honor of this episode, it takes you away. I want to take us back, reverse the polarity in the neutron flow. Back to season 18 in 1981, the 5th serial of that season, Warrior's Gate. This is during the Tom Baker era, written by Stephen Gallagher. And this is toward the end of Tom Baker's run, where we have inside the TARDIS, the 4th Doctor, Romana, Adric, and K9, while traveling between E-space and the normal universe, N-space. So we have between the normal universe and another dimension. They become trapped in a white null space between the universes, kind of like the anti-zone.
Okay.
So this is why I'm referencing this. And so while they're in there, they run across this other spacecraft, which turns out to be a slave vessel, which uses these aliens called the Therals, which are kind of like lion people, as their navigators. And because apparently they're kind of tuned into the universe a bit. And so they do some exploring in this null space. They find this large stone gateway. And beyond it is this large banquet hall, a large mirror on one of its walls, which has on the other side the corpses of several beings and the husks of primitive robots. So obviously the Doctor, they end up going through the mirror, just kind of like they do in here, and because the Therals and stuff can travel through the mirror, and there's all this going on. So very reminiscent, I think, of It Takes Away, because you did have a mirror dimension, and toward the end of the episode, they realize that the null space is shrinking as the distances between the gateway, the TARDIS, and this slaver ship continue decreasing. So it becomes smaller, so they don't have to travel as far. So kind of like the way that the anti-zone was collapsing in this. So very similar to It Takes You Away. Ultimately, the Therals are freed, and Romana decides that, she's going to be staying with the Therals. So this is where she parts ways with the Doctor.
Okay.
This is her final episode as Romana, and she leaves the show. The Doctor ends up giving her K9. So this is K9's last appearance in the series as well, until the Five Doctors, where another version is with Sarah Jane Smith. So they pass through the mirror along with the Therals and kind of go off, presumably unable to return. But of course, we find out through Big Finish audios that both Romana and K9 return to normal space, and Romana becomes president of Gallifrey later on. And the Therals, meanwhile, in exchange, they give the Doctor information about how to take him and Adric back to normal space.
Okay.
So that's how we end the episode. So
nice.
So if you kind of dug this story, you might want to check out Warrior's Gate.
Very cool.
All right. We do have some listener feedback.
Yes. Do you want me to read Holly's?
Yeah, if you would. Why don't you go ahead?
Okay. Hey, guys.
And this is referring to It Takes You Away.
Yes.
Yes.
Hey, guys. Wow, what an interesting and emotional episode. Really felt for Graham with him seeing Grace again in the mirror universe. Also him realizing as well that Grace would never let him leave Ryan to fend for himself. I can see from Eric's point of view of wanting to protect his daughter, but this was way out of control.
Seriously.
The character of Riven was interesting. Got a little more backstory about the Doctor's family. The Doctor's grandma regenerated at least 7 times. Loved the Zygon reference. Yaz's standing up to the false Grace was great.
Yep.
Glad that Graham and Ryan were able to patch things up more. Can't believe we're near the end of the season. I'll wrap it up here. Holly from Wisconsin.
Yep. Always great to hear from you, Holly. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Holly.
We definitely appreciate you writing in. You're one of our loyal feedback listeners. So
Absolutely.
We definitely appreciate that. Before Holly wrote in, we had an email once again from David K. Proctor, who wrote in about the Witchfinders. So he's kind of like catching up because he wrote obviously before we watched it, before we watched It Takes You Away. He says, too bad we couldn't explore the unusual family tree presented in this episode. King James VI and First is the son of Mary, Queen of Scots. She is cousin to Elizabeth I, the Doctor's wife, as we know.
Yes.
Thanks, David Tennant. Elizabeth also ordered the execution of Mary, who had a claim to the throne but was rejected because she was Catholic. So James's cousin-in-law and spouse of his mother's killer is right in front of him. That's a good point, David.
Nice.
I'm guessing he would have difficulty with all this, not the least of which the usurper of his mother's throne, from James's perspective, had a sexual non-binary king/queen consort. Parentheses, he has Dr. Queen Mother / King Father, ? Maybe not if he was actually non-binary as himself, as rumors say, referring to King James, I'm guessing.
Yes.
Yes. David adds, I've missed the triumvirate of Karen, Jesse, and Charles. Keep up I've missed the triumvirate too.
Yes, we do. Yes.
We hope Karen comes back soon. So Karen, if you're listening, we definitely miss you. Please come back soon. Hopefully next week for the Series 11 finale. Fingers crossed.
Yes.
Keep up the great work. Thanks, David K. Proctor. So thank you, David.
Thank you, David.
Always great to hear from you as well. And lastly, of course, we have Paul from Australia. So I'll read that. Dear Charles, Jesse, and Karen. So Paul went alphabetical once again by first name. Going to dive right into this one, referring to It Takes You Away. At first I didn't really like this story. It was trying too hard to put into words what I felt about it. But it's an episode that needs to be watched more than once to appreciate what's going on. A sentient universe that is essentially lonely. Very intriguing concept. You know it's a different episode when the Doctor actually admits she is scared of what is going on. I agree. And what about poor Graham having to lose Grace for a second time? Just heartbreaking.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know how he's going to get over his grief if she keeps showing up.
Yes.
As for this series, I've got to say it, but as much as Moffat to me, overcomplicated the show, and I can't believe I'm going to write this. I personally miss that connective tissue between stories that builds to a series finale. When Chibnall took over, I was ready for individual stories that stand alone, but now I'm confused. Something's has been set up in this series, such as the tooth-decorating aliens from the first episode and the initials on the case in Rosa, but are they meaningless, or are we going to get a payoff in the series finale? Next week will tell. It's a good question. Maybe we will in the series finale, but remember, Stephen Moffat left a number of plot threads hanging over the entire Matt Smith and Peter Capaldi runs.
Yes, he did.
And some of them he never answered himself.
Exactly.
So, so if we get a payoff, maybe we will, maybe we won't. I guess we'll find out. Hopefully we do. So back to the story. One of the things I struggled with was the father's choice to scare his blind daughter into staying in the house and leaving her for 4 days, terrified while he was away with his dead wife, right?
Yes.
We ranted about that a bit. There's a bit of a hand wave at the end, like everything's okay now, even though he did this horrible thing to her. I agree, there should have been more on that. That's one of the reasons I kind of lowered my grade about a half point for that. Can't wait to hear all your opinions on this episode. Sending you all my kindest regards from Oz, Paul. P.S. Love the reference to reversing the polarity, presumably of the neutron flow. Made me think of you guys. P.S.S.
Good.
Am still looking forward to the series finale next week. Cheers. So, thank you, Paul.
Good.
Yep. So,
very nice.
Hopefully you're looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to it. Because next time on Next Stop Everywhere, we're going to talk about the Battle of Renskor Avkolos. That's a mouthful.
That is a mouthful.
The Series 11 finale. So, yeah, I'm guessing we're going to show up on an alien world based on that story title alone. The Series 11 finale, Episode 10. Hopefully Karen will be with us because we'd love to have her, especially for the Series 10 finale. And other than that, if you want to be like David and Holly and Paul, you can reach us at nextstopeverywhere@gmail.com. That's nextstopeverywhere@gmail.com. I need to correct that. nextstopeverywhere@gmail.com. Sorry about that. Or you can reach us at nextstopsmg on Twitter or our Facebook account, Next Stop Everywhere, the Doctor Who podcast, or our spiffy new Instagram account, Next Stop Everywhere Podcast. You can reach us there. And please do. Other than that, Jesse, where can they reach you on the interwebs?
I can be reached at Jesse Jackson DFW on Twitter. I am at Jesse Jackson in Louisville, Texas in Facebook. Charles, how about you?
Of course, at Charles Skaggs on Twitter, at Charles Skaggs on the Instagram. Facebook, of course, at Charles Skaggs in Hilliard, Ohio. And my blog, Geeky Things, if I could bring this up.
Damn good coffee. And hot.
Damn good coffee and hot. I was kind of hoping Karen would be here so I wouldn't have to do it. But where I talk about all the stuff we talk about here on Next Stop Everywhere, Doctor Who, Torchwood, Sarah Jane Adventures, all kinds of comic book sci-fi goodness, and news of my other podcasts they do for Southgate Media Group, including Titan Talk, the Titans podcast they do with you, Jesse, where we're talking about the DC Universe series Titans, which has been rather good, especially with the Donna Troy episode this past weekend, which we both loved and raved about, and that'll be coming to you very shortly in episode 15. Also, the Phantom Zone podcast they do with Karen, hoping to get that back on track because, hey, there's this big Elseworlds event coming up, and I'd love to talk about that with somebody. Especially with the return of John Wesley Shipp as the 1990s Flash, which I got a tease of with Supergirl last night, and that was cool. Really dug that. And then also Ghostwood, the Twin Peaks podcast they do with Zan Sprouse, wife of comic book artist Chris Sprouse, where we talk about all things Twin Peaks and David Lynch.
Awesome.
All right. I know that's a mouthful. Everybody, thank you so much for listening to Next Stop Everywhere. I know we're running a little long, but we had to rant about a couple things.
Yes.
When we get going, you know how it is when we get going.
Absolutely. But thank you guys for listening. Thank you, Charles, as always.
Yep. Do we have a quote?
For hanging with me. Yes, I do.
All right. What's your quote?
The universe has to move forward. Pain and loss. They define us as much as happiness or love. Whether it's a world or a relationship, everything has its time and everything ends.
Very nice. Everybody, thank you again for listening to Next Stop Everywhere, and come on back. The Series 11 finale, The Battle of Ranskor Avkolos. It's going to be good, and hopefully Karen will be with us. Fingers crossed, everybody. We'll see you next time right here at Next Stop Everywhere, the Doctor Who podcast. Goodbye.
Bye.